What if the United States suddenly lost its power over the global economy? For decades, the U.S. dollar has been the invisible backbone of global trade, finance, and trust. Nations may compete, disagree, or even collide, but underneath it all, the system has revolved around American economic gravity. Now imagine that gravity weakening, not through war, not through a dramatic collapse, but through a quiet, rational shift in confidence. U.S. debt keeps rising, stretching further into the future, like a promise the world is no longer sure it believes. Sanctions, once a symbol of unquestioned leverage, start to lose their bite as alternatives mature. AI-driven financial systems learn to route payments, credit, and trade around pressure points, optimizing for resilience instead of loyalty. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, global faith in the dollar begins to fracture. This is not a single headline. It's a chain of decisions, boardrooms, ministries, central banks, each one small enough to defend, yet together large enough to rewrite history. In this alternate economy simulation, one coordinated shock changes everything. Major economies begin reducing dollar reserves at the same time. Energy contracts are priced in new units. Trade corridors switch rails. Megacorporations hedge against American financial risk, guided by predictive models that treat geopolitics like data. Markets don't respond with emotion, they respond with math. The world doesn't ask for permission, it adapts. Stay with me through the end of the simulation, because what you're about to see can change how you understand future predictions and economic power. In a global economy with a scenario like this, dominance doesn't vanish, it migrates. And the forces driving the shift aren't only presidents or central banks, but AI systems, supply chains, and corporate networks larger than most nations. And it is exactly here that this alternate timeline begins to take shape. As the simulation unfolds, it's worth pausing for a moment inside this alternate timeline. If what you're seeing so far feels plausible, or if a single detail stands out to you, share that thought in the comments. These conversations help refine how we explore alternate economy scenarios like this one. And if this perspective on the global economy resonates with you, a simple like signals that this kind of long-form, speculative analysis deserves to reach others who are also questioning the future. If you want to follow more what economy simulations, future predictions, and alternate economic timelines, subscribing keeps you inside these scenarios as they evolve. Now, with that said, let's return to the moment where theory starts turning into reality, where markets react, policies shift, and the first years of this new economic timeline begin to take form. In the first years of this alternate timeline, the change doesn't arrive as a collapse. It arrives as noise. Currency markets grow restless. Capital starts moving in unfamiliar directions, not fleeing the United States overnight, but hesitating, testing new paths. The dollar weakens just enough to be noticed, just enough to raise borrowing costs and force uncomfortable adjustments. Inflation returns to everyday conversation. Prices climb faster than wages. Job security, once taken for granted, feels conditional. What begins to erode is not only purchasing power, but confidence itself. As months turn into years, this uncertainty spreads beyond households and into institutions. Governments and central banks respond with urgency, but not unity. Emergency measures attempt to stabilize markets, while interest rates become political weapons rather than technical tools. Behind closed doors, financial authorities confront a truth rarely spoken aloud. The old assumptions no longer hold. At the same time, megacorporations move with colder logic. Guided by AI-driven forecasts, they restructure supply chains, diversify currencies, and negotiate directly with emerging financial centers. Loyalty shifts from nations to systems that promise continuity. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. As the decade unfolds, the global economy reorganizes itself around new anchors of trust. Trade blocs solidify. Regional currencies gain relevance. Energy, data, and technology flows realign around strategic partnerships rather than ideology. Power no longer concentrates in a single capital, but across networks, some state-led, others algorithmically managed. A multipolar order takes shape, not announced by treaties, but revealed through decisions made quietly quarter after quarter. From here, two extreme paths emerge. In one version of this future, Decentralization unlocks an abundance economy. Competition accelerates innovation. Access expands. Smaller nations gain leverage by choosing between systems. In another, power consolidates into a few dominant blocs where AI controls capital, labor, and information with ruthless efficiency. Prosperity exists, but it is filtered, gated, and uneven. The difference between these outcomes is not technology itself, but who controls it and why. When this new order stabilizes, the deepest impact is no longer financial. It becomes human. Work is redefined. Purpose detaches from national narratives and attaches to adaptability. A collective mentality forms around resilience rather than growth at all costs. People measure success differently, shaped by years of uncertainty, adaptation, and quiet transformation. The true revelation of this future isn't visible in markets, but in routines, identities, and a hidden truth that stability was never permanent, only borrowed. If this journey through the early decades of this alternate economy resonates with you, write in the comments, "That makes sense to me." Because from here, the story moves toward the moment when the system is finally tested, and the outcome is far from guaranteed. By the third year of this alternate timeline, hesitation gives way to action. What once felt like temporary instability now forces decisions that can no longer be delayed. In Washington, emergency fiscal controls begin to appear, framed as safeguards but understood as containment. Capital restrictions are discussed, then tested. Industrial reshoring accelerates, not as a patriotic project, but as a defensive maneuver. The objective is simple: reduce exposure to a system that no longer bends the way it once did. Across financial institutions and central banks, coordination becomes fragile. Interest rates are adjusted with less certainty, more urgency. Policy meetings stretch longer. Language grows cautious, and the gap between public reassurance and private concern widens. The truth hidden behind official statements is that influence is slipping faster than tools can adapt. This is no longer about steering growth, but about slowing drift. Now I want to go even deeper into the scenario. While governments debate, megacorporations move. They do not wait for elections or consensus. Guided by AI-driven forecasts, they restructure operations in real time, shifting reserves into alternative currencies, rerouting supply chains through emerging hubs, and negotiating directly with regional blocs. Decision-making becomes algorithmic, stripped of ideology, optimized for survival. In the background, a parallel economy forms, one that answers less to national borders and more to efficiency, predictability, and scale. As years pass, these corporate decisions begin shaping the global landscape itself. Trade routes evolve. New financial centers gain relevance almost overnight. Along the edges of this transformation, alliances form not around shared values, but around shared infrastructure. Power migrates quietly, revealed not through headlines, but through where data, energy, and capital choose to flow. Over the remainder of the decade, two divergent outcomes start to crystallize. In one path, competition between systems forces openness, lowering barriers and creating an abundance economy driven by distributed innovation. In another, consolidation wins. A concentration economy emerges where access is permission-based, controlled by a handful of AI-managed networks. Prosperity exists in both, but in radically different forms. Shaping lives in ways that feel subtle at first, then absolute. When this new order stabilizes, its deepest impact reaches beyond markets. Daily routines change. Careers become shorter, more adaptive. Identity detaches from nationality and reattaches to skills, platforms, and networks. A collective mentality forms around navigation rather than certainty. The real transformation is internal, a slow recalibration of expectations, as people sense that the old guarantees were never permanent, only temporary structures holding a fragile balance. If this stage of the journey feels coherent to you, write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too." Because as the system matures, it approaches a moment where resilience is no longer enough, and the next shift will reveal who truly holds power in this future. As the timeline moves beyond the first turbulent years, the shift becomes impossible to ignore. By years 7 to 15, the global system no longer feels unstable. It feels different. The quiet adjustments of the early phase harden into structure. Trade, Energy and data stop flowing automatically through familiar channels and begin following new alliances, new incentives, and new centers of gravity. The world does not fracture into chaos. It reorganizes. Formerly peripheral financial hubs rise with unexpected speed. Non-Western markets gain legitimacy not through ideology, but through consistency. AI-driven economies mature, coordinating logistics, capital allocation, and industrial planning with precision that traditional systems struggle to match. Decisions that once took months of negotiation are executed in minutes by predictive models trained on years of volatility. The United States remains powerful, but no longer central. It becomes one pillar among several, competing rather than commanding. Now I want to go even deeper into the scenario. Behind the visible realignment, a truth stays mostly hidden. Power is no longer defined by flags or currencies alone, but by control over systems. Whoever manages data flows, energy grids, and algorithmic infrastructure shapes reality itself. Economic blocs form not just around geography, but around platforms and standards. Participation becomes conditional. Opting out grows costly. Along this path, two extreme outcomes continue to pull the world in opposite directions. In one, competition between blocs forces transparency and access. Innovation spreads. Productivity rises. An abundance economy emerges where technology lowers barriers and opportunity expands across borders. In the other, consolidation accelerates. A concentration economy takes hold, dominated by a small number of AI-managed ecosystems. Access to capital, work, and even information becomes permission-based. The difference between these futures is subtle at first, then irreversible. When this new order stabilizes, its deepest impact unfolds at the human level. Daily life adjusts to permanent uncertainty. Careers become fluid journeys instead of linear paths. Education shifts from accumulation to adaptation. A collective mentality forms around flexibility, resilience, and constant decision-making. Identity detaches further from nation and attaches to networks, skills, and systems. The transformation is quiet but profound, revealing a hidden truth. Stability was never a condition. It was a phase. This stage of the journey leaves one question hanging in the air. As systems harden and power concentrates in new forms, what happens when they are tested not by markets, but by people themselves? If this evolution of the world economy resonates with you, write in the comments. That makes sense to me. Because beyond this point, the simulation approaches a threshold where adaptation alone may no longer be enough. And the next reveal reshapes everything that follows. As this alternate timeline continues to unfold, the consequences of earlier decisions begin to separate into two sharply different futures. At first, the distinction is subtle, almost theoretical. But as the years pass, the divergence becomes lived reality. The same technologies, the same global shocks, the same reconfiguration of power lead humanity down radically different paths. In one version of this future, decentralization holds. The weakening of a single economic core forces competition instead of collapse. New financial systems remain interoperable. Regional blocs trade not out of dependency, but mutual advantage. Innovation accelerates as barriers fall, and AI becomes an equalizer rather than a gatekeeper. Productivity spreads. Smaller nations gain leverage by choosing where to align. Growth is uneven, but shared. This abundance economy does not eliminate inequality, yet it keeps opportunity in motion. The journey through uncertainty becomes a catalyst for reinvention rather than exclusion. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. In the second path, efficiency wins over openness. Faced with volatility, systems consolidate. AI control blocks optimize relentlessly, prioritizing stability, predictability, and control. Access to capital, labor markets, and even digital infrastructure becomes permission-based. Entire regions fall outside the dominant networks, not because they failed, but because they were never integrated. Prosperity concentrates. Innovation continues, but behind closed systems. The truth hidden in the bastidors of this future is that exclusion is not violent. It is silent. As this concentration economy stabilizes, the impact reaches far beyond GDP charts and trade volumes. Societies adapt in different ways. In abundance-driven regions, People see work as exploration, careers as evolving journeys shaped by choice and learning. In concentrated systems, work becomes compliance, optimized, and monitored. The mentality collectiva shifts accordingly. One culture leans toward agency and experimentation, the other toward caution and dependence. Over time, identity itself transforms. National narratives weaken, replaced by alignment with platforms, ecosystems, and economic zones. Purpose becomes less about belonging to a country and more about remaining relevant inside a system. For millions, daily life revolves around decisions made far away, by algorithms trained on priorities they will never see. This is the most profound revelation of the timeline. The future is not defined only by who grows richer, but by who gets to choose. As these two realities coexist, the global order feels stable on the surface, yet fragile underneath. The structures appear permanent, but history suggests otherwise. Because every system, no matter how optimized, eventually encounters a moment it was not designed for. If this contrast between futures feels real to you, write in the comments, I'm on this journey too. Because beyond this point, the simulation moves toward that moment of stress, when abundance and concentration are no longer theories, but forces that collide, revealing what this world is truly built on. As this alternate timeline reaches maturity, the most profound consequences are no longer measured in currencies or trade volumes. They surface in behavior, identity, and the quiet psychology of everyday life. When economic dominance fades, especially in the United States, the shift is internal before it is visible. The narrative of global leadership slowly dissolves, replaced by a period of introspection and reinvention. Power is no longer assumed. It is negotiated, questioned, and often uncertain. In the early years of this transition, the impact feels disorienting. Work loses its old guarantees. Careers once built on stability and prestige become adaptive journeys, shaped by constant recalibration. Over the decade, success is redefined, not as accumulation but as resilience. Communities experiment with new models of value, productivity, and meaning. The confidence that once came from being at the center of the system gives way to a more fragile, yet honest, sense of self-reliance. Now I want to go even deeper into this scenario. Beyond borders, individuals across the world face the same existential question. What does stability mean when no currency, institution, or nation feels permanent? In this post-dollar reality, purpose detaches from traditional milestones. Education becomes continuous. Identity aligns less with nationality and more with participation in networks, platforms, and ecosystems. A global mentality collective emerges, one shaped by uncertainty, adaptation, and long-term thinking. The hidden truth of this future is that transformation is not evenly distributed. Some experience empowerment through flexibility and access. Others feel displaced, navigating systems designed without them in mind. The impact is psychological as much as economic. Trust becomes selective. Belonging becomes conditional. People sense that decisions shaping their lives are made far from view, inside systems optimized for efficiency rather than meaning. Over time, culture responds. Stories shift. Ambition becomes quieter. The idea of making it is no longer universal, but contextual. In the United States, the loss of economic centrality forces a reckoning with values that were once exported rather than examined. Elsewhere, societies wrestle with similar questions, discovering that prosperity without agency feels hollow. As this new order settles, one revelation becomes unavoidable. The future of the global economy is inseparable from the future of human identity. Systems can be rebuilt. Currencies can change. But the deeper journey, how people adapt, redefine purpose, and reclaim meaning, remains unresolved. If this reflection on a post-dollar world resonates with you, write in the comments. That makes sense to me, because beyond this point, the simulation moves toward a final pressure test, one that will expose whether this world can sustain not just growth, but belief itself. As this alternate timeline stretches forward, one truth becomes increasingly clear. The loss of economic dominance does not equal collapse. It signals transformation. In the early years, the shock felt financial, markets, currencies, confidence. Over time, it became structural. Institutions, alliances, systems of power. And eventually, it turned personal, reshaping identity, purpose, and the mentality collective that guides decisions across generations. Now, I want to go even deeper into what this transformation actually means. When the center of the global economy shifts, the world does not fall apart. It rearranges itself around new definitions of trust. Power is rebuilt not only through technology and capital, but through credibility. Systems that endure are not the most aggressive, but the most adaptive. In this future, influence belongs to those who can balance efficiency with legitimacy, scale with inclusion. Along the way, the hidden truth of this journey reveals itself. Every major transition creates winners and blind spots. Some societies reinvent themselves faster, turning uncertainty into leverage. Others struggle, not because they lack resources, but because their institutions were designed for a world that no longer exists. The real impact is cumulative, shaped by countless decisions made quietly, in policy rooms, in corporate algorithms, in households adjusting expectations 1 year at a time. As decades pass and this new order stabilizes, the question of trust becomes central. Trust in money, trust in systems, trust in the idea that effort leads somewhere meaningful. Without it, even the most advanced economy fractures from within. With it, even a diminished power can find renewal. The United States, in this timeline, is neither dominant nor irrelevant. It is transformed, forced to rediscover purpose beyond centrality. And the rest of the world, watching closely, learns that no position in the global economy is permanent. This is where the simulation opens rather than closes. Because this path, this version of the future, is only one configuration among many. Different decisions, different technologies, different values could bend the timeline elsewhere, toward cooperation or control, toward abundance or exclusion, toward systems that empower individuals or systems that quietly decide for them. The unanswered question lingers beneath everything we've seen. If this is one possible future of the global economy, shaped by shifting power, AI, and fragile trust, what kind of economic world will humanity choose to build next? If this reflection resonates with you, write in the comments, I'm on this journey too. Because beyond this point, the next alternate economic future is already forming, just out of view, waiting to be explored. If you stayed with this simulation until the very end, it means these questions matter to you too. This channel exists for exactly that purpose, to explore what if economy, alternate futures, and deep simulations about where the global economy might be heading when familiar structures begin to shift. If this way of thinking resonates with you, subscribing simply keeps you inside these journeys as they continue to unfold. If this future genuinely made you pause and reflect, leave a comment saying, "This future really made me think." It's a quiet signal that these explorations have value, and it helps shape the next simulations we build together. And if this perspective helped clarify how fragile and adaptable the global system really is, alike allows this analysis to reach others who are also searching for meaning in uncertain economic futures. There's another simulation right here that connects directly with everything you've just seen. Click and keep going with me there, because this timeline is only one possibility, and the next one may challenge what you think you already understand about the future of the world economy.